What's going on, everybody? This is Sean for All Select Music. Today I want to talk about this album right here. This is Run the Jewels 4, released in 2020. And seeing as how I just talked about Run the Jewels 1, 2, and 3, which if you didn't watch that video, you can go check it out over here, I thought now would be just as good a time as any to talk about their latest project. So with all that being said, yeah, let's talk about this guy. First off, I gotta say, I was not initially super excited for this album. Run the Jewels 3 was easily my least favorite project by Killer Mike and LP up until this point. It has some really good tracks on there, as well as some absolutely classic tracks, but the majority of it just didn't seem nearly as fresh or as interesting, and didn't grab my attention the same way that their previous two efforts had. However, after hearing Yankee and the Brave and Ooh La La, I immediately started getting more excited for this project, and I was really curious to see, with the retro meets future style of production that LP was going for on those two tracks, with the sort of boom bap sound mixed in with the classic like one-shot sound, as well as mixing in a ton of different elements like electronic music, bass music, and even a little bit of big beat. I was really curious to see where LP was going to take this project and if he was going to run with that for the entire album. And sure enough, he kind of came through in that regard. This is probably some of the most breakbeat heavy production I think I've heard from Run the Jewels to date. And I, as an old school hip hop head, I really appreciate that sound. It's never so retro leaning that it's wallowing in, you know, the old past sounds, but at the same time, it does a great job of calling back to that old classic hip hop sound that basically made the foundation of the genre from the get-go. So I really liked that sort of nod that LP threw in there, as well as sort of updating it for a modern sound. And in terms of quality, I gotta say, I think this might be Run the Jewels' strongest project to date. If not better than Run the Jewels 2, I think it's at least neck and neck. I think I do have to listen to it a little bit more before I kind of rank which album goes where. But right now, Run the Jewels 4 might be my favorite album of the year. Simply put, I think this is some of the best material they put out to date. The album length is absolutely perfect. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and it doesn't feel too short to all it does is leave you wanting more. It stays exactly where it needs to be. It feels concise, and it's just honestly one of the most enjoyable albums that I've heard this entire year. It's also easily Run the Jewels' most aggressive, most pulverizing record to date. I don't think I've listened to an audio assault from LP like this in the longest time. And quite honestly, even right before I started shooting this video, I was going back through some of the tracks that maybe didn't stick out in my memory all that much, and just grinning from ear to ear because I just absolutely love all the tracks on here, except for one. But I'll get to that in a little bit. Yeah, and this album to me is just absolutely stacked with highlights. The first 4 tracks don't disappoint. Oddly enough, this has been a trend for pretty much their entire catalog. Yankee and the Brave kicks things off perfectly. It is probably the best call to arms track that they've had in their entire discography. Ooh La La, I love that detuned piano. I love the drums on it, the verses on it from LP, Killer Mike, and the way that they play off of each other. Absolutely perfect. I really like Out of Sight. The verse from 2 Chainz is surprisingly really good. I love the use of the Silvers sample, and I really like the speaker destroying sound on this track. It's easily one of the hardest hitting things on this record. I really like Holy Calamafuck with its use of the reggae sample. It does sort of slow things down a little bit in terms of the momentum that the record starts off with, but it's still just as ferocious in its own way as everything else on this record. Goonies vs. E.T. might actually be my favorite track on here. I love the minimalistic, bassy, bass-heavy soundscape on here. I really love that drum break interlude. I love Killer Mike and LP's verses on here. I think these are some of the best brag verses that they've had in a while. Walking in the Snow is definitely one of the best political tracks that they've done. Gangsta Boo's inclusion on it really just works more as like a hype man or hype woman, hype person. And I think LP and Killer Mike really do their best political messaging in this track, and it's definitely one of the highlights midway through the record. And then everything after Just, I like just as much. It's not quite as strong and as memorable as that first run of tracks, but there's still great moments on here. Never Look Back has this really cool sci-fi vibe to it. I really like Killer Mike and LP's flow on this. The Ground Below is just an absolute stomper of a track, and Killer Mike just comes out completely swinging, resembling almost like the African Elephant lyric that he used in, I believe, Run the Jewels or Run the Jewels 2. Don't hate me for not exactly remembering what record that's from. Pulling the Pin with Mavis Staples and Josh Homme is easily one of the creepiest, most unsettling tracks that they've ever released, and is a great late album highlight and definitely one of the better mood pieces on here. And I love the last track on here, A Few Words for the Firing Squad Radiation, is probably the best album closer since A Christmas Fucking Miracle on Run the Jewels 1. Basically from top to bottom, I absolutely love this record. LP and Killer Mike are in top form. Flows are still great. I think I'm gonna have to listen to this record a few more times to really pick out all of the little bits of lyricism in here. Killer Mike is still pretty direct with his revolutionary language, and LP is just as good at coming up with rewindable lines that you have to go back over and over again to catch all the nuance. And to me, this is kind of the complete package. It's got the lyricism, it's got the political commentary, and it's got some of the best hip-hop production I've heard in a long time. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a nearly flawless project, except for one little blight on this record. I'm sorry, I can't get behind Just. Zack de la Rocha just feels forced as always. Pharrell Williams has one of the most contrived, hypocritical, and condescending choruses and lyrics I've heard in a long time. LP is borderline forgettable and invisible on this track. And Killer Mike's flow just feels so forced. It just doesn't work. And this is the one track that I constantly find myself skipping. But the one thing I will say about it is that I always just pass it and don't let it affect what is otherwise a nearly flawless album and easily a contender for my album of the year. If you haven't listened to this project yet, you are easily missing out on one of the best albums of 2020. Cannot recommend this album enough. Definitely get this if you can. It's available for free download. You can pay for it so you can actually get the track separations, and hopefully I'll be able to pick this guy up on vinyl. But yeah, when all is said and done, even with that one track that may be one of my least favorite songs I've heard all year, this album is still an absolute masterpiece. It's definitely one of the best albums they've put out to date, and I definitely look forward to going back and listening to it more and more for years to come. So that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thanks as always for watching. If you've listened to this album, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. If you want to hear this record for yourself, please head over to my WordPress or Steam It blogs, because that's where I will post music links to any of the albums that I talk about on this channel. Also, make sure you head over to Mixcloud, where you can check out Raw Select Radio, the audio component of this whole Raw Select music brand, as well as definitely look out for more of my Facebook live stream archives, which I will be posting on this channel at a later date. Links to everything, as always, down in the description. But that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thanks as always for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. So until then, peace out!